my name's Sarah Smith. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of the Office for Product Safety and Standards. Welcome to this webinar today, looking at the topic of the Code of Practice on Product Recalls and Corrective Actions. It's great that you've been able to join us to join in the discussion. We've got an excellent lineup of speakers today to talk you through the development of the code, the objectives in establishing the code, and also to hear some best practice from colleagues both from regulators and from business about how they've sought to use the code of practice in their work. So the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy was very pleased to support the development of this code and to work in partnership with BSI in developing a publicly available specification that for the first time ever has brought together a consolidated set of practice on how to prepare to conduct an effective product recall should one be needed. We're very conscious that effective product recalls require effective planning, a set of expertise in making sure that effective decisions are made in a timely manner, and that also the communication preferences of the many diverse consumers who use consumer products in the UK is properly taken account to make sure that the outcome of the corrective action or recall is successful. So the Code of Practice draws all of these ideas and concepts together and provides a very practical suite of guidance for both businesses and regulators to help them to prepare, to cooperate together, and ultimately to ensure a good level of consumer safety and consumer protection here in the UK. So I'm very delighted that we have colleagues joining us today to find out more about how we've worked together to develop the PAS, and hopefully you'll take some inspiration away from today's webinar, whether you're from business or from local authority, in terms of implementing a product safety incident plan in your organisation so that you can be prepared should the need arise. That's super, Sarah. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Jonathan Lyons from BSI to explain the process leading to development of the PAS. And as we go along, if you input questions and answers for the panel session at the end, that would be very useful. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all the questions that you might have. Okay, Jonathan.
Thank you, Gordon. So as Gordon said, I'm Jonathan Lyons from BSI, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about who BSI are and what a PAS is, and who were the different organisations that were part of the steering group that produced the PAS. So a PAS, or Publicly Available Specification, is a document that can standardise a product or service, and it's developed by the British Standards Institution, who are the UK's national standards body. A PAS is built upon consensus of relevant stakeholders that are made up of different groups, so they could be from government, regulators, they could be from industry, they could be consumer groups, and all of these different experts coming together to show what good practice is and develop a fast-track standard that's developed in 9 to 12 months. This slide shows the PAS development overview. It shows that when we're developing PASs, we use international standards drafting techniques. It shows that the different stages that the PAS goes through in its development. But one just to highlight is the review panel. So as part of the consensus building process, we call together a group of stakeholders that form part of the review panel. And this includes anyone from the general public that wants to make comments on the draft. So it's really getting a wider group as possible to input into the draft of the PAS that then forms the good practice that is used by businesses or consumers that can then benefit from the PAS. So this slide shows the different types of stakeholders that were involved in the development of the PAS. So as you can see, we've got consumer groups representing the consumer, alongside industry and different types of industry. So that could be big business and also SMEs that were represented as part of the steering group. alongside government. So it's definitely not in the development of a PAS, BSI writing it. It's a whole wide range of stakeholders that come together to show what good looks like. And this final slide, it's really just to show that PASs can be about anything. So in the past, we've even had PASs on trampoline parks or the delivery of refrigerated goods. So although this PAS is just about product recalls, the next PAS could be about anything. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jonathan. Right, Gordon Madden from BASE. Just want to give a bit of background to the standard, if we could have our next slide, please. These are the issues that we were trying to address in the standard, that product recall, product safety incidents actually present a very complex management challenge for business, where a lot of decisions have to be made in a short period of time, often in unfamiliar territory, and really businesses need to have thought through in advance how they're going to approach those situations. So that was one of the challenges. And the way we do recalls at the present time, actually rates of recovery are hugely variable and often quite low. So the aim is to really ensure that as much of best practice is adopted as possible in order to try and deliver the best possible results. There's also a lot of inconsistency out there in terms of the effort that business puts in to get products back from consumers when they need to. Some businesses also put a lot more effort into traceability and putting monitoring arrangements in place than others. And also some businesses were reluctant to engage with regulators at an early enough stage in the process to share the expertise around these sorts of issues. So the idea was that there needed to be a practical guide both for regulators and for business that really set out what it was that was expected in terms of best practice, and really to try and deliver an overall step change in performance. So there we are. That's the document, free to download now, and we hope it provides a practical and straightforward guide. So two parts to it. Part one focuses on responsibilities of business, and really the key focus is on developing of a product safety incident plan as to what the business should have thought about in advance of a product safety incident arising. It also has a bit on what businesses should be doing to monitor the safety of their products, how they join up the various bits of incoming information to make sure they see a complete picture as to how their product is performing in the marketplace, and to pick up issues early so that they can be nipped in the bud, rather than the more product that is out there, the wider it's been distributed, the more difficult it is to deal with an incident if it arises. Traceability is very important in terms of doing an effective recall, both of the product and of the customers and where the product has gone. It's also very important that incidents that occur are investigated safely in order to ensure that the right decisions are made with regard to the necessary corrective actions. The code also deals with implementing the corrective action and how that's worked. And it has a range of annexes with supporting information and tools around risk assessment for businesses and regulators as well. So main thrust of it, that businesses should have a product safety incident plan in place that covers all of the various aspects of the thing. So senior management commitment is key to having an effective system, and that's something that really needs to be addressed by businesses to get senior level buy-in to development of the plan, and also following the plan if an incident arises. Clearly a plan of this sort needs to be developed by a multidisciplinary team. The document sets out the core elements in terms of traceability and monitoring and investigating incidents, and developed by practitioners. So the intention is that this is a practical, straightforward guide, a usable tool for businesses to use. The document also has a section 5 which really deals with the application of the product safety incident plan to a specific safety incident, and and deals with what you should do about putting the various steps in place in order to start communicating a recall, and how you deal with the incoming information, how you deal with the affected product, and also how you wind down a corrective action and know whether you've done enough to get your products back from the marketplace, and how you capture the learning from the process to revisit and revise your system over time. And partly Section 5 is to deal with the businesses that face a product safety incident when they haven't actually prepared as well in advance as they should. But the key to getting it right is actually putting the advanced preparations in properly in the first place.
Thank you. My name's Phil Owen from the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. I'm Service Director there. And first of all, I just want to say that CTSI welcome being involved right at the start of this in the development of the Code of Practice, and also recently how it's been involved in delivering the training to now just over 400 local authority trading standards officers and environmental health officers throughout the UK. So we're very pleased to be involved with that in collaboration with the Office of Product Safety and Standards. So on our journeys around the country, this is what we've sort of been indicating and pointing to regulators about what their obligations should be. So you'll see on the slide there, it talks about part 2 is specifically for regulators. And I know that certainly when we've gone around and talked to businesses, they've been very happy that, or welcome, the transparency of this Code of Practice, in that it actually stipulates the obligations of businesses, but also what businesses can expect from local authorities. And in this point here, we see that this part of the code sets out the assistance that businesses can expect. It actually goes some way to clarifying the legal notification requirements, devising an incident management plan, outlining the need for competency and capacity, and outlining the need for data gathering and protection. And it sets out, what regulators need to do, but not how. So on that first couple of points then, on the clarifying legal notification requirements, if you do have a Code of Practice in front of you, on page 19, under paragraph 2.2, you'll see there that this is how the code has gone away to try and simplify the law by stipulating that there is a legal requirement for businesses to make sure that local authorities are aware of goods that are placed on the market that are not safe. Now, it doesn't say how that's to be done, and as you read the code through, and certainly the messages that we are trying to send out, is that this should be in collaboration. And we realise that businesses and local regulators should be working together to work out themselves exactly what notification should be involved. The short and cuts to local authorities, we appreciate that is, not going to allow sort of lots and lots and lots of businesses to be able to tell them everything, every single incident that happens. So it's all about working together and working as a partnership between business and local authority to work out what incidents need to be dealt with. The regulators' plans, well, yes, we're not only asking businesses to create a plan, but also regulators themselves. And this needs to be reviewed annually and also specifically after an incident. And you'll notice again today, people will mention a few times that senior management need to be engaged in this process. We are also asking local authorities to think about the competency of the officers that are involved in any dealings with the businesses in this area. So they should really have a good knowledge and understanding of consumer product safety regulations, standards and guidance. They should have a good knowledge and understanding of the sectors and product areas that they regulate. They should also have the skills and knowledge and expertise needed to understand and access relevant technical and safety data. Now, to help with that, we also encourage regulatory collaboration, not just only with local regulators throughout the country, making sure that they can share data and expertise, but what is good news at the moment is the Office of Product Safety and Standards are looking at providing in the future access to scientific and technical support to really support the regulators in their dealings with businesses, and we certainly welcome that. So regulators, should also be prepared. They should have appropriate mechanisms in place to review their own activities and arrangements. That will provide assurance to our Secretary of State and others, and that's all in accordance with the Regulators Code. Now, how we're sort of encouraging regulators to go about their discussions with businesses is actually to use Annex C, and again, you can view that if you have a code of practice in front of you. We are basically sort of encouraging local authorities to use this really as an agenda for one of the meetings they have with their businesses. And it's there to make sure that in the first place, you've got a list of contacts between businesses and regulators. And this is very important that this is kept up to date. What we don't want is a plan to be created and then a few months later the contact list, if there is an incident, is out of date and the wrong people are being contacted. So that needs to be sort of a prime part of this working together. We are also basically asking that there's a single point of contact between businesses and local authorities, and the Annex C that we're saying should be an agenda should be, form a regular part of meeting with the business. So what we're really encouraging is that businesses and local authorities should work together in close cooperation. And this is hopefully going to be able to provide the assurance going forward. So the key to it all is that the business and the regulators should discuss their product safety incident plans together, and it shouldn't be the first time when an incident arises. The first time should be the preparation of the PSIP. It shouldn't be when an incident happens, and that really helps the local authorities and business to be able to deal with any corrective actions or even recalls that may come from a corrective action. So we're looking that this code is a foundation for building better, strong relationships between regulators and businesses, between regulators and other regulators, certainly trading standards, environmental health, but also between regulators and product safety, Office of Product Safety and Standards.
Thank you, Phil. Over to Judith to give us a business perspective on the code.
Thank you, Phil. Judith Peacock from Dixon's Carphone, the Group Technical and Health and Safety Director. So product safety, it goes without saying really that it's essential. Prevention is the best of all, of course. Ensuring products are safe before they go on sale by ensuring you've got product approval, you've got a good supply chain and a robust quality management system in place. But even with the very best of processes, unforeseen events can happen. And that's why it's really important to have a monitoring process in place and feedback, and also a plan for what to do should a hazard be identified. And this is where I think PAS 7100 could really help businesses. So in Section 4, it outlines what some of the key points are when you're creating your incident plan. We've already mentioned about having key departments and your senior managers involved. Product traceability is probably one of the most important things I'd like to shout out here, to do with model numbers, serial numbers, batch codes. Where is that information held? Is it at the factories? Do you have it as a business? Think about actually where you'd actually get this information from. And customer traceability. The most successful recalls are always where you've got the customer names and addresses or emails, phone numbers, and you can get hold of them directly. Of course, with GDPR, you have to be really careful how this information is held and for how long, but having good customer traceability will really make a successful recall should you ever need to do one. Mentioned about the monitoring process, you need to know how your products are performing during their entire life cycle, not just their warranty period, but those products could be in use for many, many years, and you need to be able to keep an eye on how they're performing. If an incident occurs, you need to be able to do a risk assessment and then decide what your corrective action should be. Following that, you're going to have to do a lot of communication. So you need to have a plan for how and who is going to do that communication for you. And with all good plans, you need to train the plan, you need to test it, and continue to review and update it. Because if an incident should occur and you identify a hazard that you need to take action on, you're going to need to act very, very quickly. So it's important to have that plan in place. Section 5 goes on to more talking about the actual how you do the corrective action. Mentioned assessment, so you must identify the issue, do the root cause analysis to actually identify what exactly is the problem that you're facing and determine therefore how many products are affected. Is it just one batch? Is it many years worth of production? Also, does it affect different products, different sizes, different colours, maybe even different brands? Think about how many you sold, where you sold them. You could have sold them in a different country. You could have sold them through different outlets. So knowing what those products are and where they are, so that you can then contact all those relevant customers afterwards. And doing that formal risk assessment to understand what is the appropriate action you need to take. Now, depending on what the root cause is and what the hazard is, the action you need to take could be something very small. It could be perhaps updating some instructions, maybe sending a warning notice to customers for a hazard that wasn't readily obvious to them. Or it could be you need to do a modification or component change activity. Or perhaps if that's not suitable, you might need to exchange those products, take them out of circulation. So depending on what the hazard is and on what the product is, you then need to work out what is the right corrective action. So writing a safety notice, there's some good examples in the PAS 7100. You've got to use very clear language, strong language. It's no good saying that there might be perhaps a minor quality issue and please customer, would you mind contacting us? Because it's really important that you alert customers that there's an issue and you need them to get in touch with you. Also think about, depending on what you're going to do, how you're going to do it and where. So is it something, do you want the products brought back perhaps to a store? Is it you're going to send engineers into customers' homes? And talking about engineers, do you have access to a big pool of engineers who could potentially go around the country to existing customers' homes to actually conduct that modification program for you? If so, how are you going to train them? Where are you going to get your modification kit from? And thinking about the number of products that are affected and how many engineers you've got will enable you to work out the potential timescale for how quickly you can get round to all of these customers. You will need to look at stock you've got in supply chain. Do you need to modify it? Do you need to dispose of it, rework it? And also that continual feedback builds some changes into future production. So once you're actually doing an incident management, contacting customers, of course, is imperative. Many, many methods of contacting customers, letters, emails, text messages, phone calls, social media. Not all at once, but you can do one at a time and see what the success of that is. A customer who might not respond to an email might respond to a letter. So think about doing them on different days, different times, different methods. Get hold of and continue to measure how many customers have responded and contact the other ones in a different way. Communication, both internally and externally, is going to be vital. Particularly if it's a large campaign, you might have media interest. You probably need somebody in your company then to be on point for actually communicating with everybody involved. If you want customers to call a helpline, have you got access to a helpline? How many people could answer those phones? How many hours a day, a week can you actually keep that helpline open for? And compare that to the volume of calls you're expecting. When you do get hold of those customers and you are able to either take the products out of circulation or do the modification, you'll be able to measure that accurately so you know which customers you haven't managed to successfully contact yet and try a different method of contacting the other ones. I'd strongly suggest having a project manager, presuming it's a sizable campaign you need to do, being able to coordinate all the activities and communicate is going to be key, and having one person who can do that for you will pay dividends. So once you've been doing the management for a while, the question is, have you done enough? Is there anything more you can do that's reasonable and proportional to the size of the risk? Because unless you've actually got hold of 100% of those products, really you need to keep that campaign live. And how are you going to do that? How do you keep that campaign live for a long period of time? So at this point, you're going to have to look at the success of the program, also make certain you won't repeat the problem in the future, and see if you need any changes to your plan. So in summary, regardless of how careful a business is, unanticipated incidents can occur. So it's really important to have a plan in place, setting out what you will do in such a scenario. Effective monitoring of all of your products means that you don't become surprised and there isn't a problem building that you're unaware of. So you must act promptly, continue to monitor and act promptly when you need to. So if you've got a plan, you'll know how to manage those incidents, you'll know how to make objective decisions about the corrective action, and I really think that the PAS 7100 can give businesses a really practical tool, take you step through all the things you need to do to be able to manage such an action. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. We'll go to Richard Lewis from Hertfordshire Trading Standards to give an enforcement perspective. But if you could keep your questions coming in for the panel, then any questions you've got, please input them. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Richard Lewis, and I work in the business team at Hertfordshire Trading Standards. So, what does Trading Standards do? Well, we're a market surveillance authority, not the only one, but the one that deals with the majority of product safety matters. We work to prevent unsafe products being placed on the market. Clearly, we work with the law that we're given by government, and we help businesses comply with that, and part of that is obviously about protecting consumers. Our experiences at Hertfordshire have been varied and numerous. We've been involved in very large-scale corrective actions and some small ones with big businesses and SMEs. Some of them have been incredibly well managed. You just heard one business speaking about such. Some have been a little bit more painful. It won't always be bigger businesses that get it right and smaller ones that don't. But the commonality will be the businesses that do well are the ones that are prepared for it. Another general comment is that there's a large lack of knowledge around the risk assessment process among a lot of businesses. And that really is a key part of being able to manage the complaints that come in about your product and knowing when you need to flag something to Trading Standards or another relevant market surveillance authority. Help can be given by that, Trading Standards. There's training courses you can get on it, but really it's a key part of being prepared. The PAS 7100 has a clear aim about setting up product safety incident plans, helping with risk assessments and helping businesses be prepared to deal with things when they go wrong. There's obviously aspects that Trading Standards need to do as well. So we have our incident management plan, and we be working with businesses on product safety incident plans. The PAS is very clearly written and easy to understand. If you're used to working with legislation, British standards, I think you can happily pick up the PAS and find it an awful lot easier to read and understand what you need to do. The annexes are incredibly informative and helpful, and once you're familiar with it, will be the tools that you use on a day-to-day basis. And one of the common points throughout it is the encouragement for businesses and Trading Standards to work together and get to know one another, so that actually if something goes wrong, they're working together rather than actually at odds with one another. So back to product safety incident plans. Every business, whatever size, should have one. The annex, although it's really set up as a tool for Trading Standards to help audit businesses, is also a really good starting point for a business to get their head around what they need to do. It has to have a director level sign off. You don't want to end up dealing with a situation where you don't have that and then having to have those arguments later on. If you get that at the start, then you'll be ready to go when something happens. It should be simple, clear lines of communication and responsibilities. You'll need to have your technical people engaged in the process. You'll need to be aware of media team, legal team and so on, but you don't want to have too many people involved, as that will just complicate the lines of communication. And most importantly, it should be tested before you have to use it. Our experience of our incident management plan was that we tried it out on some of our officers who weren't so familiar with product safety matters. We did dry runs of incidents with them and made sure that they could actually understand what was going on. And by doing that, we could be confident that it actually would work in practice. And to reiterate Julie's point, how good is your traceability? If you're looking at products, what size of product group are you looking at? Is it everything you've ever produced, as you haven't put batch numbers or anything? Or can you narrow it down a little bit more? Again, a bit of foresight really does help you. So in Hertfordshire, we're working with large businesses and small businesses, and we'll be sort of making strides to get out and try and engage more with SMEs that maybe need a little bit more help. So we'll be fine-tuning existing arrangements and developing new ones. Above all, our aim will be to encourage open communication. Common question we will get asked, or we do get asked, is when do we get in touch with you? Businesses don't want to send us the details of every complaint they get. I can assure you, trading standards don't want to receive them all. It's about knowing where the trigger points are and being familiar with a risk assessment concept so that actually you internally can do that. But have a conversation with your trading standards and get to know one another, and that question you can just resolve easily. Another thing about engagement is that really, if you engage now, you'll find it a lot more cost effective. We've dealt with businesses who've employed expensive legal firms to deal with matters where they really necessarily didn't need to. There are instances where you would want to do that, but not always. Be prepared, speak to trading standards, and yeah, if you don't have contact details for them, get in touch and say you want to talk about the PAS. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that enforcement perspective. On the point of open communication, keep those questions coming in for the panel session. And without more ado, we'll pass on to Christine Hargreaves from the National Bed Federation to provide a trade association perspective. Christine.
Good morning. I'm the Technical Manager for the National Bed Federation, and I'm going to give an insight into the role of trade associations in PAS 7100. So the National Bed Federation is the recognised trade association for UK manufacturers of beds and their suppliers. Founded over 100 years ago, membership is voluntary, and our members today account for approximately 75% of the total UK bed and mattress manufacturing sales. So what role does a trade association play in helping business comply with PAS 7100? Well, we see the role of the trade association as raising awareness to our members, educating members on the requirements of the PAS, promoting uptake and encouraging implementation, and pointing members in the right direction for further help and assistance. And in the PAS itself, under section 4.3, it does specifically state that assistance will be available from a range of other sources, including trade associations. So we've definitely got a role to play here. So I'm going to talk to you next about what we've done as a trade association on those 4 points to help raise awareness of the PAS with our members. So we felt it was important to communicate not only about the PAS, but about the launch of BSI's new Office of Product Safety and Standards to our members. And we have a monthly newsletter that goes out to all of our membership, and we announced the launch of the Office and the PAS 7100 when it was published, along with a summary of the content of the PAS. We also went one step further to try and reach a wider audience and published an industry magazine article called Safety First to talk about general product safety and PAS 7100. So what have we done to educate our members? Well, at the National Bed Federation, we also have our very own code of practice where our members have to show commitment and compliance to a number of things, and more recently we've included PAS 7100 requirements. So we rolled out training sessions in November and held 2 sessions in the north with our primary authority at West Yorkshire Trading Standards, and a further 2 sessions, one in the Midlands and one in the south. As part of the education and training seminars, what we actually felt was we needed to start with the basics. So we actually started with general product safety regulations and how that provides a framework for assessing product safety, in the same way that PAS 7100 provides a framework on developing a product safety incident plan. We had a lot of discussions around technical files and product risk assessments, traceability, and we also actually went further and used a case study to make some of the examples more meaningful and relative to our industry. We had some real discussions on experience in the room about those that have been involved in product recalls and what made them effective or less so. And we discussed all of the aspects that my colleagues have talked about already in terms of the content of the past. But it really was important to have a plan to decide when a corrective action is correct, when to monitor and measure, and when a product safety recall might be necessary. But I think the key message was that all businesses need to prepare, whether they're small or large. The National Bed Federation Code of Practice was first introduced in 2013 and has received assured advice status with our primary authority, West Yorkshire Trading Standards. So we're looking for our members to demonstrate compliance in a number of areas, and more recently you can see in 2019 we've added PAS 7100 as one of those requirements. So our members were provided with training on all of the above areas, and it was important to do that free of charge to ensure that we reached a wide audience. And now our members hopefully are busy putting their plans in place and developing their product safety incident plans. In our code of practice, our members must undertake an audit to demonstrate compliance in order to continue to receive their approved member status. So through our own code of practice team, we'll be able to monitor our members and see how they're progressing in creating their product safety incident plan. Now, we're not expecting our members to have a plan in place immediately, but we are expecting them to demonstrate that they've obtained a copy of the PAS 7100, they understand the requirements, and they've got a commitment in place to develop that plan and introduce it. So what we did to promote uptake of the PAS 7100, as well as the training sessions, we actually provided those links to our members as well, so they knew where to download the free PDF or how to obtain the hard copy for a fee by contacting the BSI shop. So in terms of pointing members in the right direction for further assistance, well, who can help? Well, we've done as much as we can as a trade association to give the tools to our members to start to look at their plan and the considerations they need to develop it. But trading standards also have a role under Part 2 of the Code, guidance for regulators. And it's important to remember that trading standards are there to give business advice and not just there to enforce. Trading standards can help evaluate, advise and assist business to help them get their plans right. And we strongly recommend business working together with trading standards to seek advice to make sure they have an adequate and effective plan in place. So in terms of engagement with regulators, early engagement with regulators is key. As a trade association, having a primary authority relationship with West Yorkshire Trading Standards, we can also help our members in the lines of communication with trading standards should they so need it. But I think the key thing and the key message is establish your product safety and incident plan well in advance. Do not wait for it to go wrong so that you're prepared in the event that something happens. And really, we see PAS 7100 as a common sense and practical approach to being prepared and understanding what to do in the event of a safety incident. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christine, and our other speakers. That's absolutely fantastic. So we've now got a good bit of time for questions, so please do send your questions in. One of the questions we've had so far is, will slides be shared after the webinar? And they certainly will with participants. And also, BSI has a promotional page for PAS 7100. If you Google PAS 7100, it pops up straight away. So that is fine. In case you think my voice has lowered a bit, I'm Gordon Madden. Sarah Smith's unfortunately unable to be with us for the question and answer session, as she's speaking at a meeting of retailers wanting to know all about the ins and outs of Brexit at the present time. So first question we've got in, this is one for, I think, for Richard and Phil. Are all trading standards authorities also market surveillance authorities, or are there only certain ones that may focus on different product sectors?
Richard Lewis here. All trading standards are market surveillance authorities for the majority of products that you would consider in the product safety sphere. We aren't market surveillance authorities for motor vehicles, for example, hence my clarification earlier. But all trading standards are market surveillance authorities. Some will have specialisms in certain areas, and part of that is tied in with the work we do around primary authority and working with businesses, giving them advice. But all of them are market surveillance authorities, so you can contact your local authority. They are a market surveillance authority.
Just to clarify one other thing, in Northern Ireland, it's the environmental health that are the market surveillance authorities for this area, for product safety. So it's environmental health that will be dealing with that. Okay, I have a question for all of our panelists, one of my own. What aspects of dealing with product safety incidents actually proves most challenging for you? Richard looks as if he's about to enter into this fray.
That's Richard Lewis from Hertfordshire Trading Standards. I think the biggest challenge is dealing with businesses who aren't set up to deal with incidents and having conversations with them about risk assessments where you don't necessarily agree. Where the businesses that are set up to deal with things will generally have a better handle on where the risk is. Those that don't, we tend to have slightly longer conversations with about where we think the risk level is. And again, if you're set up to deal with incidents, I think you'll save time and effectively money when you actually have to deal with something, if you're prepared.
Bill? Okay, that's fine. Judy.
Yes, so Judith Peacock from Dixon's Carphone. I'd say probably getting customers to respond to the safety notice, and when they do, making sure that you actually take that action quickly and that you can record it. So, for example, it might be a scenario where a customer might phone in to say, yes, I'm happy to have an engineer to come and visit to modify my product. Mm-hmm. And they might say, can you phone me back tomorrow, as an example? And being able to make sure that follows all the way through. Because what might happen is you might try and call them back the next day to arrange the appointment, but perhaps that customer is out. So making absolutely certain. So again, it's that post-incident traceability of all the actions in place, particularly if you're doing a large campaign. You'll have a lot of customers phoning, potentially emailing, social media, making sure that you can verify every single customer and every single product has been addressed.
Christine?
Yeah, I think it is sometimes the communication to the customer and ensuring the customer understands the need to respond to the communications that you send to them and return the products. Certainly sort of pushing a retail hat on when I've worked in retail previously. That was a big thing. If a customer has a product and they don't see that there's an issue with it, and they dearly love that product, they're sometimes quite reluctant to give that product up and they have to sit in and wait for another replacement, to come to them. So I think it's ensuring that, all the communication lines are very clear and the customer understands the need for the return of the product.
Right. Thank you, Christine. We have a question as to whether the code and the principles in it just apply to UK businesses or of wider resonance. Our intention very much is that the principles that are in there have resonance in any marketplace, and there is an ISO standard on product recalls and corrective actions, and we're hoping to influence the development of that and input the knowledge that we've learned into that process. On Christine's point, I think behavioural insights is really important. We've got a lot of work going on to really understand how customers receive messages and why they respond or don't respond and how that might be improved. It's often said that traceability is the biggest blocker to effective recall. What do you think can be done to improve that over time? I was recently looking at some technology that Vodafone had developed that could be embedded in an electrical appliance that would enable it to be messaged via the phone system in whoever's hands it's gone to. I'm just wondering the extent to which technology may help us solve that problem. Obviously, if products are sold online, it's a lot easier to contact at least the first buyer of them than previously been the case.
Yes, it's Julie Peacock here. I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to continue. I've mentioned social media. So I think the point is the world keeps changing. A few years ago, best practice for conducting a product recall might be to put some national adverts in the papers, and that was deemed as the best way you could get hold of customers. The world continues to change. Products are usually purchased via and some electronic or bank card methodology. So I know we've previously had conversations with banks to see how they can support, although they can't obviously provide us the customer data directly. Potentially, by us knowing what bank cards have been used, we can actually contact customers that way. So I think it's a case of continuing to evolve and adapt, and that's why with the plan, you don't just write it once and leave it static, because the world keeps changing. As you've just mentioned, Gordon, there are potentially technology solutions, and I think there's often been the Samsung Note 7 recall has been talked about quite widely, where of course they could actually contact customers directly. They knew exactly who had which phones, and they were actually able to start adjusting how the phone was operating remotely. So I think it's, like I say, the world has changed a long way from just putting a couple of adverts in the national paper and hope the customer brings the product back into the store. I think you just have to continue to adapt with the market.
One of the things that we've been looking at in the Office for Product Safety and Standards is the potential for there to be a further code of practice developed by BSI that actually deals with the steps that businesses should be taking to ensure that their products are safe in the first place. And just test your views as to whether you think that would be useful and a good idea.
Certainly going around the country training standards, environmental health officers, I think that's seen as been a very good idea, because certainly the code of practice that we have in front of us now has been very useful for not only businesses and also local authority regulators to be able to use, and in conversation it's something that can be pointed to, and that has certainly been a benefit. And I just wanted to mention one of your last questions about frustrations with this area. I think when we first went round on training, I think our local authorities that were in attendance were saying, it's going to be very difficult for SMEs to be able to get access to this code of practice, and it was an excellent way forward that the Office of Product Safety took upon themselves to actually buy the licence for SMEs and also for local authorities to have access to this. So it's really good. So I can only say that going forward, if there was a code of practice that both regulators and businesses could use to ensure safer products on the market, then then bring it on.
Right, so very good questions coming in here. Thank you, Phil. So the question, this is a good one in terms of how the product safety regime applies to products that are supplied to corporate users, because clearly things used in business are covered by the Health and Safety at Work Act in the UK and the Health and Safety Executive. And what are the links between the two in terms of data sharing and commonality of practices? Phil? Is that Richard?
Or is that the name? I'm not quite sure, or possibly. Richard Lewis here. One of the comments I'd make is that white goods gained a lot of attention, and certainly there's corrective action in relation to white goods. I would imagine that there's probably quite a lot of corporate users of those products. Every local authority will have numerous fridges in their kitchens dotted around, and businesses too. There's responsibility on those businesses to make sure that their staff aren't at risk. So, all the businesses listening in, have you registered all your appliances? That'd be a question back to everybody.
And we have a question on the Internet of Things. Now, our view at the moment is that the current legislative framework we have is adequate to deal with the consequences of Internet of Things, but obviously it provides special challenges and complexity both from a business perspective and for regulators.
Sure, Judith Peacock. So I'd say here it's a framework and therefore it can be adapted. We've heard from the Bed Federation and we're now talking about Internet of Things. I think the whole point is PAS 7100 is a framework. The principle about doing a risk assessment, deciding from that risk assessment what corrective action is needed, I think can apply to any product type, whether it's a bed, a phone, white goods, and obviously Internet of Things. So I think the short answer is it's because it's a framework and it's written in quite straightforward, simple language, it can be adapted for pretty much any product on the market.
Yes, we have a question about products that are incorporated into infrastructure, and that's extremely interesting. Obviously, construction products are covered by a separate enforcement regime, which also enforced by trading standards, but again, in the light of Grenfell as being subject to major review and potentially a further investment in central technical capability to support local authority enforcement in that area. Yes, good question for enforcement as to how you approach those situations.
Richard Lewis at Hertfordshire. I have to be honest, we'd have to take that on the facts of the incident. It's not something that's very easy to give generalist advice about. In theory, at the minute, construction products is, as Gordon said, enforcement responsibility for trading standards with the Market Surveillance Authority. So if there was an incident, contact trading standards. We might well be asking for some further help from government departments to deal with it, but actually, in theory, it's the same route as anything else.
The practical challenges are effectively the same in terms of working out where the product is and the best way of dealing with it. So regardless of the legal framework, the practical challenges remain the same. Very good question. Right, I think we've got time for a couple more questions if we have them. Okay, if we're all done, then I think we can bring the webinar to a close. And thank you everybody for your attention and interesting questions that we've had today. So thanks everybody. Thanks very much everybody for taking part. I'm sure that the Office for Product Safety and Standards will want to do further webinars on this in future. We're putting a lot of effort in as the Office for Product Safety and Standards to raise awareness and train trading standards officers around the code on the basis that they will be the main avenue of going out and making businesses aware of it. Trade associations, as you heard from Christine, also have a big role to play in this. I know professional bodies as well, Electrical Safety First, etc., are keen in promoting the code. There's been, what total number of downloads of the code so far, James, do we know?
We have over 300 downloads so far, but we're doing a big campaign to push that out recently. So you will be seeing a lot of that information. The POS is available to download for free on the BSI website. So please feel free to come. We will send you the link after the webinar, so you will have access to that. We will also be following up this presentation with a video of this entire presentation. We'll be sharing the slides with you, and you'll be able to download the POS from the email that we will send you as a follow-up.
And we welcome any thoughts that anyone else has as well in terms of how we can promote the PAS further. So it's something we continue to work on and recognise there's more work to be done. On the PAS 7100 landing page on the BSI group website, there is a section for questions that you might have, and you can fill out your question, and that will be delivered to BASE for them to respond. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. We found this very interesting and useful. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.